Yeah.
Off we go then. Hello and welcome to episode 5 of CJ's Racing World. My name is Ian Davies and I'm anchoring and co-hosting this podcast. But let's get straight across to the social media racing and betting royalty that is Miss CJ Racing UK. CJ, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Thank you for asking. So, right, let's crack on with our second podcast of the week. Starting off with CJ's Racing Week. And I gather you're basically going to talk about York. And we're going to kick off with the Wednesday. And I believe the first race you'd like to talk about is the Acomb Stakes. Is that right?
Yeah, so we tipped the winner of the Acomb on Tuesday's pod that we did. That was the Lion in Winter. He's now favourite for the 2,000 guineas and the Derby, so he was seriously impressive.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I seem to recall you saying in your preview that he had a very progressive pedigree. But I see the stars out for Dam, who was placed over middle distances in a listed race as an older horse, and he looks the sort that's going to improve with racing. I thought he battled on well, and I think it could be a good renewal of the race. I mean, the Acomb threw up a 2,000 guineas winner 2 or 3 years ago. And I've got a feeling that might be quite a good race. I know the connections of the third ruling court were gutted. They expected to win the race. He'd been impressive at Sandown Park first time out, done some quite good sectionals. But I think time might tell. That wasn't a bad effort from him. He was very impressive indeed. So we'll look forward to the Lion in Winter over the winter, won't we?
Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. I think the next race you wanted to touch upon was the big race of the day, indeed the week, the International Stakes, won by City of Troy, which, as you rightly said in your preview, was always the most likely winner of the race. He actually drifted out to be quite a backable price at one point. He touched 13 to 8 with one firm. They actually went bigger than on the exchange. I'll talk about the exchange a bit later. But what did you want to say about the international stakes?
Yeah, I mean, he was the most likely winner of the race, and I believe people were laughing in the end with the price they got. But as for the race, I think they just let Rymore run away with it, and he won, and that's the end of that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Ryan Moore is head and shoulders above all the other jockeys. I think he's the best jockey of the current era in my book, and he had a very good meeting. He had a very good day that day. He won on the Lion in Winter. He won on Los Angeles, and he won on City of Troy. He gave the horse a wonderful ride out in front, and he does frequently ride his opponents to sleep. Yeah, and the horse rolls on and won again. And I was less than shocked to hear Aidan O'Brien say it was the best horse he'd ever trained, because whichever horse is next off to stud always is the best horse he's ever trained. It might be true in this case, but there you go. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about on Wednesday, or should we move on to Thursday?
I think we should move on to Thursday.
Yes, well, in suitably objective and unbiased fashion, CJ and I agreed before we went on air that there's only one race worth talking about from Thursday, and that's the race in which we backed a winner. That was Alpha Kalenic in the final contest. Started 17 to 2, drifted out to a monster price on the machine on Betfair Exchange, 18.32. I couldn't understand why. I kept counting how many legs she got down at the start, and she still had 4. The good thing for me was I kept pressing up out of annoyance because I backed her under the odds and kept backing her under the odds. So I kept having a bit more on her, and for once that worked out. And she another game performance. I think she's won something like 5 on the spin now. So we like Alpha Kalenic, don't we?
We do, yeah.
We do. We're a fan. We're a fan. It had nothing to do with the fact we had money on her. Moving on to today and the Nunthorpe. Well, what did you make of the Nunthorpe, CJ?
So I backed Frost at Dawn at 50 to 1. which I thought she ran really well. Actually, she was only beat 6 3/4 lengths, and well, as for the top of the leaders, top the leaders of the market, sorry, Asfour and Big Evs, everyone seemed to be talking about who was going to win of those two. It was like Asfour v Big Evs again, Goodwood Clash Part Two, and neither of them were in the top three, which made it quite the exciting race, really.
Yeah, yeah, it was an interesting contest, and I followed you in with Frost at Dawn. I thought she was. I like a best to big price, and I have to admit, same as with Alpha Kalenic, I did keep pressing up on our Frost of Dawn out of annoyance. Because she was massive prices on the machine, around 140 and things like that, and she didn't actually run that badly. She was beaten under 7 lengths in the end, even though she was only 10th. And you could argue she did outperform her market odds because she beat at least one horse who was a shorter price in the betting than her. But yeah, that was all good fun. Right, are we ready to move on to our second topic?
Yeah, I think so.
Right, we move on to CJ's hot racing topics, in fact, of which we've just got the one that I believe that CJ would like to talk about this week. And it's that those two incidents, one at Windsor Racecourse and one at Kempton Park, involving Doyle and Shepherd. So, what would you like to say about all that?
Yeah, so I don't think it's a BHA thing. I think it's two different sets of stewards with two different interpretations of the rules. So the Windsor stewards taking a very lenient view of James Doyle, and then there's the Kempton stewards taking a pretty tough view of Callum Shepherd. I think in the same way that referees have to apply the rules of football, um, some clearly have a different way of going about it in matches, and some people seem to think that the Windsor stewards are interpreting the rules in a different way to the Kempton stewards. And looking at the two incidents, it's not hard to see why some people think it was double standards.
That's an interesting take. I I didn't see the James Doyle race live. But I read the accounts of it afterwards and what Doyle had said, and so in a way, I kind of read the book before I watched the movie because I watched a replay of it afterwards. And listening to James Doyle's account, he it seemed to me that he was leading everyone to believe that it was all he could do to stay on the horse,
Mm.
and he virtually had to stop riding, but to stay in the saddle. And that didn't quite seem the way it was to me when I watched a couple of replays of it, to be honest. I, I was expecting something far more dramatic than it was. And yeah, I think he was definitely given the benefit of the doubt by the stewards at Windsor. I did see the Kempton Park race live because I actually was a beneficiary of it. I did actually have a bet on the race, and I was fortunate because I had a bit of money on the horse that ended up getting up to dead heat. Uh, my view was that perhaps Callum Shepherd did stop riding in the very, very dying strides, but I've seen far, far worse. It wasn't exactly clear cut. And certainly when you compare the two incidents, Callum Shepherd is entitled to feel he's not exactly had the rub of the green in the steward's room
Mm.
there. I think it's fair to say. Um, is that us done on that subject?
Yeah, I think so.
Okie dokie. Right, let's move on. And now it's time for
Racing highlight of the week. Enjoy that run. Yeah, enjoy that. Thank you. Racing highlight of the week.
moving on to our next item, which is CJ's best racing bets. And I gather, CJ, you've got three horses for us for the concluding day of the big York meeting tomorrow. Would you
Yeah,
like to talk about them?
I would. Um, so I've gone for Yashin in 3:35 tomorrow at York. Irish trainers have a good recent record in the Ebor. They've won 5 of the last 10 renewals, and 3 of the last 10 winners were 5-year-olds. So yeah, it was only beaten 3 lengths when 7th in the race last year from a high draw, and has had a wind up since disappointing last time out. But it's got a high draw again. I just think it's overpriced.
Fair enough. Yeah, Yashin, an interesting one. As you say, Irish horses have got a good recent record in the race and possibly in staying handicaps in Britain generally, the same as they've got a good record in handicaps over jumps. Yashin, 33 to 1 in a place. I think it's a bet 365 when I checked just before we came on air.
Yeah.
Various extended places available. 44 win only on the machine, but it has to be said that even allowing for the fact that it's like, late afternoon, overnight, given that this is a big meeting, there's very, very little liquidity in the Betfair market at this stage. I know it gets a lot better nearer the race, but nobody seems to want to lay a bet anymore. So anyone who wants to try and get on one at a price and hope the price collapses, Betfair Exchange is increasingly not the place to do it. But it's a bit of 44 win only, 33 to 1 each way. And that's an interesting one in the Ebor.
Yeah.
And what's your second choice, please?
So I've gone Vingegaard in the 4:45. Ran a Stormer when 3 and quarter lengths 5th or in the Windsor Castle at Royal Ascot, and only beaten a neck in a super sprint at Newbury. Might not have been suited by Goodwood's undulations last time out, and I just think 12 to 1 looks too big on a galloping track.
Yeah, interesting one there. I think it's fair to say that if Fingerguard had never gone to Goodwood, no way would he be 12 to 1, which he is generally. You can't really beat it on the exchange. Going back to my earlier hobby horse, it's only like 13.5, which is like virtually the same after commission. Interesting horse, and a return to a flat galloping track. Could well work the oracle for it. So that's interesting. And what's your third and final one,
Gone
please?
Oviedo in the 5:20. Runner up in this race last year, off just a pound lower, and ran a blinder when 4th in the Cambridgeshire. Ground might have been against the ear last time out. His shrewd trainer is in decent form and looks as well handicapped as anything else in the race.
Fair enough. Interesting one there. When Oviedo disappointed last time out, the ground was good to soft, and I've always been reared. When I used to work in northern betting shops for Habishaws, and they had a rails pitch at York, and they always used to talk about our bookmakers. They did a lot better when the ground was a bit tacky. I gather it's recovered marshland on the Knavesmire. In fact, some guy who lives near the track reckons it's on some sort of glacial plate. But anyway, let's not get into a BBC Two documentary about it. The quicker ground may suit Oviedo, and he's 9 to 1 in a place if you shop around, and it's actually a pathetic 8.8 on the machine. So there you go. So 3 interesting horses there from CJ for Saturday. Yashin in the Ebor, the 335 at York. Vingegaard in the Roses Stakes, the 445, and Oviedo in the concluding race at 5:20. So, moving on to our final topic, CJ answers your racing questions. Now, as always, a big thank you to those who kept the online mailbag nice and full with questions this week. We had a real struggle to narrow it down to 3 questions, but we got there in the end. And the first question for you, CJ, is would you like to name an up and coming trainer to follow in the days, weeks, months, and even years to come?
One that comes to mind straight away is probably Daniel and Claire Kubler in Lambourne. I went to their yard a couple of Lambourne Open days ago, and they were really good. They did these talks and stuff about pedigree, Yeah, I learnt quite a lot. Even got a horseshoe, I believe. He seems quite go ahead, and he places his horses really well. He's got a couple of really good ones, I think. So yeah, that's two trainers kind of together there. They are as one, Daniel and Claire Kubler.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm not big on following specific trainers. I'm very keen on trainers hitting form. I think that's a big factor. If you can spot any yard that's just about to hit form and ahead of the market, you can do that. But
Yeah.
actual individual trainers, I'm not massive on. Right, moving on to question 2, and this is my favourite question of the lot because I've got one. I've got one for this myself, and I'm looking forward to it. Right. So our questioner asks, brilliant question. This. If you could bring anyone from the past in racing back to life, bring them back to the from the dead, and have them on our podcast, who would it be? So go on. Who would it be for you?
Um, bring him on the podcast. I'd probably go Shergar.
Oh, for fuck's sake! Really?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus wept. That was
No.
mine.
Really?
Well, yeah, we talked about him last week.
we, talk-
I'm just
we
getting
did
into
talk
my
about him
stride
last
with
week. I thought we
Shergar.
talked about him two weeks ago about the. Oh, I don't even know anymore. But anyway, it's the first one that comes to my mind because I was thinking we'd have him on and we'd ask him how he feels about being named after the Shergar Cup.
Yeah, same.
That's brilliant.
If I could have 2 superpowers, I'd be able to hold seances and talk to the dead. And like Dr. Dolittle, I'd be able to talk to the animals. And I want to ask Shergar what he really thinks about them naming that nonsense at Ascot after him instead of one of the races he won by after track. So there you go. Yes, Shergar,
Definitely,
definitely.
yeah.
If we could talk to
Yeah.
him, yeah, I reckon Shergar would have plenty to say about the Shergar Cup, and none of it would be
Yeah,
positive.
Shergar didn't go
Absolutely.
missing for that.
There's no answer to that.
Oh, God.
Right. Final question. This is another interesting one, actually. We've got some good questions this week. Right. What, CJ, do you think about the contrasting styles of the way ITV cover football and the way ITV cover horse racing?
That is an interesting question. So when ITV cover football, like a big race, a big match at Wembley, they don't have a Luke Harvey type character going around, clowning about, talking to people about whatever that isn't anything to do with football, asking where you come from, where did you get your hat from, where did you get your dress from. I'm falling asleep just thinking about these questions. They don't feel the need to talk about anything other than football, even when they're showing clips. Like they'll show old clips of old matches and so on. Like they don't show people dressed up, people drinking champagne, people having strawberries and cream, people sitting on the grass and having a picnic. Where did you come from today? I've driven from down the road and sat in 5 miles of traffic. Whatever. I don't care. Like they don't have anything like that. There's no fashion at the football. Because people switch on football on ITV to watch football. Football ITV believe that football sells itself, but ITV Racing doesn't believe that racing sells itself. So they have to include all this other stuff that nobody is interested in, let's face it. That's my view.
I could not agree with you more. You know, ITV, when they cover football, have complete faith that football is a sport that the world loves, never mind the nation, and that football will always, always, always sell itself.
Yeah.
And they don't feel any need for any of the sort of nonsense that ITV racing indulges in. And you could apply it. They could go around, asking people what pubs they drank in on the way to the match, what food they ate, what the food's like, but they don't. They concentrate solely on football, which is absolutely and entirely correct. And one of the central reasons why I refuse to watch ITV racing, in any shape or form, is that when I did used to watch it, they've got no faith in the racing product whatsoever. They don't want. They hardly ever want to talk about betting. Although I gather they're doing it. They're paying a bit more lip service to it now. But there is no faith among the producers at ITV and the producers of the show that racing as a standalone sport will sell itself. And there's this sort of like delusion that people will watch racing when they're not really interested in racing. I mean, it's just
Mm.
like I don't know. I mean, it's like hoping that people go to a restaurant who are racing fans because they might have the racing on the telly in the background. People go to the restaurant for a meal. Now, I absolutely, absolutely agree with you, and I think that that's a great question because it really brings it into sharp focus. It's sad, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, people who switch on the football want to see football, and people who switch on the racing want to see racing. If I switched on the football and they were showing what people are wearing, um, I'd be pretty annoyed, to be honest. But we're supposed to accept that as racing fans because, as part of racing, it is how people dress and stuff like that. So they have to show that. But we pay subscriptions to channels to watch live racing. We don't pay subscriptions to channels to watch people. For example, they were pouring beers out of the drafts today at York, and they wasted about 15 minutes on that. It doesn't make for good TV. I don't know what that's got to do with racing. I don't understand. Like, it's a subscription service so people can watch the races. They should be going from race to race, previewing it, going straight into the racing to the next race to the next race, and like not showing this. It was trying to be a bit like ITV racing, and well, we have our view on that, don't we? So
Absolutely, absolutely. What you're saying, there was that kind of sort of ITV-esque stuff on the
racing
paid
TV,
for channel.
racing TV.
Unbelievable,
Mm.
absolutely unbelievable. If I was paying for that, which I don't, I'd want a refund.
At
It,
least for this month, anyway.
absolutely, absolutely. There needs to be a belief that racing sells itself. The big problem is, I think, is that historically, the way people engaged with horse racing was by having a bet on it. Having a bet on it turns it from horses running around a field into something where you feel like as engaged as you feel like you own the horse for 10 minutes or for the duration of the race. You have a bet on it, no matter how small, and you feel involved. But they won't talk about the betting anymore. And they try to sell all the nonsense in between the races, and also the human interest story. There's a limit to how interested people are in the story or the journey people have gone on. There's a lot of privilege in racing anyway. It's not a particularly lengthy journey for a lot of people in any event. It's rich person becomes richer. I mean, it's hardly gripping drama. I find it massively frustrating the way ITV covers racing. I do get that at the end of the day, they're not ambassadors for racing. They're a commercial channel doing whatever they think will maximise their viewing figures. But I think the BHA should, I think racing should think about it next time ITV's license is up for renewal, frankly, because, the perception is as long as racing's on terrestrial TV, it doesn't matter how it's covered. It's great to be on terrestrial TV. I'm not so sure myself. So yeah, I
Mia, have you
completely
ever
agree
gone
with you.
anywhere where the racing's on in the background? Like I'm struggling to think of anywhere that you walk into where there's there's racing on in the background purely because they think people want to watch it. There's always football on in the background. There's always rugby on in the background. But is there ever racing on in the background of a pub or something like that? I don't think that happens.
Well, I don't know about pubs because I'm so miserable. I don't drink, and I don't drink, and I hate people, so I don't tend to go in pubs very much. Last time I was in a betting shop, you struggled to even see racing on in the background in there. You know, but yeah, I get what you mean. I mean, not a lot of people think, oh yeah, let's have a big screen and stick the racing on. That'll get bums on seats. Doesn't tend to happen very much,
And
does
if
it?
they did stick the racing on, why would they want to see some lady pouring beer out of a? Is it called a draft? I don't know what that's called. Like, but she was pouring beer out of it, and they wasted a whole 10-15 minute segment on this, and yeah, that was pretty rubbish.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely appalling.
Yeah.
And the only positive is I feel vindicated for never watching it, really. So that's the good to come out of that. Right, have we ranted on long enough about that question?
Yeah, I think we could cover that on another time. Really, I think we've got lots to say on this particular item.
Yeah, I think we will. I think we'll. We'll be. Um, they call it a critical friend, don't they? So you can be racing's critical friend, whereas I don't regard myself as a friend. I'll just be critical. So yeah, that'd be good. Excellent. Right. I think that just about wraps it up. After all, we have done 2 podcasts this week, and so I think we've worked extremely hard, don't you?
Yeah, I'm knackered.
Yeah, I mean, you're entitled to be. I mean, 2 podcasts.
I
My
know,
God,
it's exhausting
where's
sitting
the
here
nearest
talking.
oxygen
I
tent?
know.
Yes, I think we need to have a nice restful bank holiday weekend after that. Right, so that just about wraps it up. Many thanks for joining us and listening to us rabbit on as usual. It's much appreciated. It just remains for me to say that we hope you have a splendid August bank holiday weekend, whatever you're up to. And CJ and I will hope and indeed expect. I mean, what's the matter with you if you don't tune in?
Mm.
We will expect to have your company again the next time. Take care. Goodbye.